Now the last thing we want to be doing with these forms is styling them with a little bit of CSS. Now you might remember that I mentioned to you that these elements here, the text elements that we see here, the email and whatnot, have the text right next to the boxes. And I didn't really like that. But when we inserted these elements, they were inserted in a label tag. So because of that, I think the first thing that I want to do is to target a label. Now you could do this directly inside of the form element itself, and remember it has an ID too, so or a name or anything along those lines. But I think I just want to target the label itself. So I could come to my CSS. Before I do that, let me just switch back to live view. And what I'm going to be doing is introducing a new CSS rule. And this rule will just be the tag, not the input, but rather the label. So I'll come in here and I'll write in label. When we do that, I'm going to have my CSS rule definition, and I'm going to go to the category called block. In the category called block, we're going to change the display type from inline to block. And when you press apply, click OK, you can see exactly what's happened. Everything that used to be next to these pieces of text are now underneath it. Why? Because this entire text, the whole first name, is extending the whole way around because it is now block level. So that puts all of these elements one underneath each other. Now you may not have wanted it to do that in these areas, and that's fine. You can create like a custom class or something like that to change this, but I'm going to leave it as it is for the moment. And same thing here, we've signed up for the newsletter, all of those things are looking good. Next thing I want to show you is how we can actually select these elements in here and we can make them a different color. Now be careful because we do have inputs, but inputs are for all elements here, even the checkbox and the radio buttons and stuff like that. So I think the best thing for us to do is to create a custom class. We can create a class for these input here, for example, and I could make them so that they are not block level. We'll say inline. Let's see if we can do that first. So I'll come in here and we should see label down at the bottom. That's okay if it's at the bottom because I'm going to create a little comment later to say that these are form elements. So let's just introduce a custom class, and I'm going to call this class .inline. Now the only thing we're going to be doing here is to go to the category called block, and we'll display this as inline. I'm just going to click OK, and when we go to our design view, I'm going to turn off the live view for a second. You can see that these elements here are now block level. You can see how they've expanded the way Dreamweaver shows you in the design view. But I can say, let's give this a class, and the class I'm going to choose is inline. I see what happened. So I'm going to select this one, and we're going to choose the class inline as well. Finally, we'll select this one, and we'll say inline. And that's done exactly what we want it to. It's created them so that they look like they're inline. Good. The next thing I want to do is to target these boxes themselves, text field. But like I said, we're going to create a custom class to do that. So let's create a custom class. I'm going to come in here, I'll choose class from my list, and I'll just say form BG, form background. So I'll click OK, and when I do, I'll go to the background and we'll choose the same background color that I have here. I'm also going to choose a background image, and you might remember we've been using in our images folder BG transparent. So I'll just choose those elements and I'll say OK. Now at this point what I'm going to do is select one of these elements here, this text field or that one, doesn't really matter. And notice here where it says class, and we can apply form BG to that particular class. If you don't see it, don't worry, because now when you turn on the live view you get to see exactly what that looks like. Isn't that neat? And it looks a whole lot different than what the basic styling would be. Let's also go a little bit further with this, and now that we've applied it to something, we have a better indication of what it's going to look like. So I'll double click form BG to open it up, And in here, I think I'll also put a little bit of a border on this. And maybe we'll say solid border, 1 pixel all the way around. And I'll probably just choose the dark gray that we were using. Very nice. If you wanted to, you could even give it a little bit of padding. So maybe all the way around? Sure, why not? Let's try something like, 10 might be a bit much. If you apply that, you could see that's pretty big, but I don't know. Maybe I'll go with that. So looking at this, you can sort of see what it looks like, and that's just great. And as you can see, the padding in there. What if you didn't want the text to be this color? Well, you could change that too, just by going to color. So let's take a look. If you go to Form BG, and perhaps in the type area, we can choose from color. Well, maybe I'll just choose white. And if you apply that, you see what it looks like. Now, I'm not that crazy about it, so I think I'll keep it with 333, and that'll look pretty good, as we can see. Now what I want to do is to just turn off Live View for a second, and I'll select the other fields that I happen to have here, and we'll use the same class, Form BG. I'll select this one, Form BG. I'll select even this one here, and we'll say Form BG. Now if we go to our live view, wow, look at that. That looks so much better than it did just a second ago. Now you might be wondering a little bit about the checkboxes and the radio buttons. Unfortunately, there's no real way that we can style these elements using CSS. You could do it with some jQuery or JavaScript, but unfortunately right now we're stuck with them as they are, and there's not much we can do without some advanced programming languages to help us along. But at this point, I'm pretty happy with what I happen to have at the moment, and as you can see, it's doing exactly what I expected it to do, and that's pretty cool. So that's looking pretty good, and it gives us the option of having nicely styled elements that we have, and you could change the sizes of the names and the comment boxes if you wish, but at this point I think that's more than enough for us, and we're doing pretty well. By the way, if you wanted to, you could also make the label elements look a little bit different as well. So for example, I could come in here and perhaps go to where it says label. Label is just displayed as a block level element, but I could come in and edit that information, and perhaps we could say something like text transform. Well, let's see if it's all uppercase. Very nice. You see what that looks like? And we could make it bigger or smaller. Maybe I'll just reduce it somewhat. Maybe I'll say 0.9, and let's just see what that looks like. Whoops, not pixels of course, but ems. And as you can see, it's just made them a little bit smaller. Not too bad, However, if you prefer it being 1, then just leave it at 1em, and I think that's fine for our purposes. Good. So now we've got those elements in place. We've got our contact page styled with a very nice little form. The only other thing we need to do is to start looking at some CSS3 transitions and some nice little effects that we can apply to this particular website.